Building on transition architecture, you now reach the point where your strategy becomes an executive commitment. An enterprise architecture roadmap is not a decorative chart. It is a leadership contract that explains what will change, when it will change, why it must change, and what the organization will get in return. When executives trust your roadmap, funding becomes easier, delivery becomes clearer, and governance becomes calmer because everyone is working from the same plan. With the contract idea in mind, you need to understand what executives are truly asking for. They want confidence that the organization is investing in the right things, that risk is being managed, that capability uplift is measurable, and that delivery will not become an endless transformation that never finishes. They also want a roadmap that helps them communicate direction to the business, defend investment decisions, and hold teams accountable for outcomes. Now that you know what executives want, you can adopt the roadmap mindset that separates high impact architects from busy ones. You are not sequencing tasks, you are sequencing outcomes. A roadmap is trustworthy when every initiative ties to capability uplift, value delivery, risk reduction, or operational improvement, rather than simply listing technology work that sounds impressive. With outcomes as your focus, you now gather the inputs that make your roadmap defensible. You need business goals, current state constraints, target state direction, transition states, delivery capacity, dependency reality, and risk posture. You also need funding constraints and timing drivers, because a roadmap that ignores how the organization funds change will not survive executive scrutiny. With inputs ready, you now anchor the roadmap in capabilities, because capabilities are how leaders understand progress. When a roadmap is expressed through capability uplift, executives can see what the organization will be able to do better at each stage. This also makes progress measurable, because you can define maturity improvements and outcomes rather than relying on technical completion statements that do not translate to business value. With capability focus established, you now make sure your roadmap answers the 4 questions executives always have. What capability improves and how will you prove it? What it costs and how spend is staged? What risks exist and how they reduce over time? When value will be delivered and what dependencies affect timing? When these 4 dimensions are visible, your roadmap becomes decision ready rather than inspirational. With the 4 dimensions clear, you now design sequencing that executives can defend and delivery teams can execute. You start with foundations that reduce risk and enable reuse, such as identity governance, observability baselines, integration standards, and operational clarity. You then include early visible wins because executives need proof that the journey is working. You also design for compounding value, where each stage makes the next stage faster, cheaper, and safer. With sequencing in place, you now include what most roadmaps hide: dependency truth. You make dependencies visible, such as upstream platform readiness, data quality constraints, vendor timelines, and operational capacity. You also surface constraints like regulatory deadlines, legacy system limitations, and skills gaps. This is not pessimism. This is credibility, and credibility is what executives trust. With dependencies exposed, you now craft the cost narrative in a way that executives can absorb. Executives do not want a spreadsheet lecture. They want to understand the cost shape. When peaks occur, where fixed costs become variable, and how investment reduces long-term operating cost or risk exposure. You also show that you are actively avoiding waste by eliminating duplication, reducing vendor sprawl, and standardizing platforms where it creates leverage. With cost addressed, you now show executives the risk curve, because many transformations fail due to unmanaged risk rather than lack of ambition. You explain inherent risk in the current state, and you show how each roadmap stage reduces specific risks such as single points of failure, weak identity controls, insufficient monitoring, fragile integration, or unsupported technology. You also show where risk temporarily increases during change and how transition states, controls, and assurance processes contain that risk. With capability, cost, and risk clear, you now connect the roadmap to governance so it does not drift after the first funding decision. You define how architecture review forums validate that initiatives align to principles, target state direction, and transition sequencing. You also define how exceptions are handled, how decisions are recorded, and how accountability is maintained across portfolios. This is how your roadmap becomes a living guide rather than a one-time presentation. With governance embedded, you now define how progress will be measured in terms executives and leaders respect. You measure progress through capability outcomes, operational improvements, reduce risk exposure, improve resilience, and improve delivery speed, not just technical completion. This prevents a common failure mode where teams report activity and outputs, but the organization does not feel any real improvement. With measurement defined, you now focus on how the roadmap is communicated, because format affects trust. You present the roadmap as a story with stages, each stage delivering outcomes, reducing risk, and building foundations for the next stage. You use plain language and consistent terms so executives can repeat your message accurately to their peers. When executives can repeat your roadmap story, your influence multiplies. With the roadmap structure set, you can now ground it in a realistic example. Imagine the enterprise wants to modernize customer services to reduce call volumes, improve digital experience, and strengthen compliance. Your roadmap begins with foundations such as identity and access governance uplift, consistent monitoring, and integration ownership clarity. This stage improves security confidence and reduces operational surprises. The next stage introduces reusable digital service patterns and standard integration approaches, so new features can be delivered faster and with less risk. A later stage rationalizes duplicated systems and improves customer data consistency, reducing operating cost and improving reporting trust. The final stage focuses on decommissioning legacy components, simplifying operations, and locking in long-term savings and resilience. Executives trust this roadmap because it shows value at each stage, risk reduction over time, and controlled sequencing rather than disruptive leaps. With the example in mind, you should recognize why roadmaps often lose executive trust. They fail when they are too detailed too early, when they ignore dependencies, when cost is hidden, when risk is treated as an afterthought, or when every stage is labeled as urgent without prioritization. You avoid these failures by keeping the roadmap outcome-driven, dependency-aware, risk-informed, and staged for funding and delivery reality. Let's now discuss the key takeaways from what you learned so far, so you can build roadmaps that executives trust and teams can execute. An enterprise architecture roadmap is a leadership contract that connects strategy to deliverable outcomes, not a decorative timeline. Executives trust roadmaps that are anchored in capability uplift and that clearly show cost, risk, and timing in a decision-ready way. You build credibility by sequencing foundations first, delivering early wins, exposing dependencies and constraints, and showing how risk reduces over time. You keep the roadmap real by integrating governance, defining exception pathways, and measuring progress through outcomes rather than activity. When your roadmap is communicated as a clear story with stage value delivery, leaders can defend investment, teams can align delivery, and the organization can sustain momentum. As you move into the next lecture, start treating your roadmap as the most important trust-building artifact you create for leadership. Subscribe to the channel, so you do not miss the next videos in this playlist. Like this video, so it reaches more leaders and architects who need practical guidance on roadmap credibility. Comment with the hardest part of road mapping you face right now, whether it is cost justification, dependency reality, risk communication, or executive alignment. Share this video with someone who is preparing a transformation plan, because a trustworthy roadmap is how you turn ambition into funded, governable progress.